told him I feel for her life. Not only me, my dad even said the same thing. We feel for her life. So how is it that y'all still let that baby leave? That baby never supposed to leave that hospital.
In the late hours of May 4, 2024, staff at Norfolk's Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters were confronted with a scene that would haunt them forever. A young couple walked in, carrying their unresponsive newborn daughter. She was just 9 days old, fragile, innocent, and completely dependent on the care around her. But what happened next would shock everyone who witnessed it. Instead of the urgent concern you would expect from a parent desperate to save their child, the father, Hillary Johnson II, was laughing as he signed her in, a strange, unsettling calm in the chaos. And her mother, Zebrea? She was detached, showing little of the panic one might expect in such a moment. Just 9 days prior, the warnings had already been given. Her grandfather had pleaded with staff to act, to check on her, to intervene, yet those warnings were ignored. What the doctors discovered next would change everything. What should have been a safe hospital visit would become a horrifying tragedy after her blanket was unwrapped. This is the life and death of Ijaya Johnson. Her name was Ijaya Johnson. Born at Centera Norfolk General Hospital on April 25, 2024, in Norfolk, Virginia, she was the first child of 24-year-old Hillary Johnson II and 22-year-old Zebrea Parker. And from the very moment she arrived in the world, someone already foresaw danger, but the system failed to act. The couple lived together in Norfolk, beneath the overpass of Brambleton Avenue in a makeshift tent. They didn't have money. They didn't have a home. They were a couple navigating young adulthood and parenthood. Neither parent was reported to hold stable employment at the time. For Hillary and Zebrea, life was already difficult before Ijaya's birth. They were young, struggling to find stability, and trying to build a future while living in conditions that were far from safe or secure. The arrival of their daughter brought joy, but it also added pressure. Tragically, that same pressure would drive the couple to commit unspeakable crimes against their own child. Life beneath the overpass was harsh. The couple endured cold nights, damp mornings, and the constant noise of traffic overhead. Their shelter was pieced together from tarps, blankets, and scraps, offering little protection from the daily natural elements. Each day was a struggle. Becoming parents in the middle of such instability was overwhelming. Hillary and Zebrea were still trying to figure out adulthood themselves, yet now they carried the responsibility of caring for a newborn. However, for a brief moment, Ijaya's arrival brought light into their dark reality. She was tiny, fragile, and innocent, a symbol of hope in the middle of hardship. But the weight of their circumstances pressed down harder than ever. Every cry reminded them of what they lacked. Every sleepless night showed the uncertainty of their future. And then, just as life seemed to be testing them at their most vulnerable, the unthinkable happened. Just 9 days after her birth, Ijaya's wrapped in a blanket and in the arms of her father would be rushed to a hospital. However, this hospital visit is about to set off a horrifying chain of events that would leave doctors and nurses shocked to their spines. On May 4, 2024, Hillary and Zebrea brought Ijaya to the hospital. They walked in carrying their newborn daughter, only 9 days old, but their story was strangely casual given the gravity of the moment. Their explanation was simple. She had fallen from a stroller while Hillary was jogging 2 days earlier. They claimed they treated her at home with witch hazel and gauze, waiting until the situation became unbearable before finally seeking medical care. That delay alone raised questions. Why would any parent wait 2 days to bring a fragile infant to the hospital after such a fall? The choice hinted at something deeper, a troubling mix of neglect and denial that would soon unravel under the harsh light of medical examination. But something else caught witnesses' attention. Witnesses noticed the couple was laughing at the reception desk, unable to spell their daughter's name or provide her birth date. To staff, the behavior seemed unsettling, almost detached, given the seriousness of the situation. Psychologists often describe this kind of response as emotional blunting, a defense mechanism where individuals mask fear or guilt with inappropriate affect, such as laughter. In high-stress or guilt-laden situations, some people dissociate, appearing oddly calm or even amused, as if their minds are shielding them from the gravity of what's unfolding. To the medical team, however, this wasn't just strange, it was alarming. They immediately noticed inconsistencies. When doctors and nurses began examining baby Ijaya, they noticed she was cold to the touch, suggesting she had been unresponsive for hours. Not only that, they noticed burn marks at the bottoms of her feet. The injuries were extensive. Cuts and bruises scarred her head, face, and back. Later, the autopsy revealed broken ribs and internal bleeding. I pause here because even reading these words feels chilling. A 9-day-old child. How much force does it take to break ribs that tiny, to bruise a body that fragile? These injuries were definitely not from a stroller fall. After several minutes of doctors working desperately to revive her, the effort came to a heartbreaking end. Ijaya could not be saved. She was pronounced dead. Ijaya's life was tragically short. At just 9 days old, she had barely opened her eyes to the world before it was taken from her. But little did anyone know, warnings had already been raised. Hillary's grandfather was present the day Ijaya was born at Centara Norfolk General Hospital. For him, the joy of welcoming a new life was overshadowed by a deep sense of dread. He later revealed that he warned hospital staff he feared for the infant's safety. In his view, neither Hillary nor Ziabrea were fit to be parents. He pleaded for someone to intervene, voicing concerns that the baby's well-being was at risk. But according to him, those pleas were dismissed. His warnings were treated as little more than anxious speculation, rather than a potential red flag. Sadly, the ignored plea became a haunting prelude to what would unfold just days later.
Well, tonight we are learning more about an infant baby girl who Norfolk police say was murdered by her parents.
The baby's grandfather is speaking out on the abuse and talked to our Michelle Wolf only on 10. Michelle?
Ijaya Johnson was born on April 25th at Centara Norfolk General Hospital. Her grandfather was there that day and tells me he warned hospital staff that he feared for the infant's life. He did not believe his son or daughter-in-law were fit to be parents. He says his pleas were ignored.
So I told him I fear for her life.
Hillary Johnson Sr. thought he'd be celebrating the birth of his first grandchild. Instead, he's planning her funeral.
Not only me, my dad even said the same thing. We fear for her life. So how is it that y'all still let that baby leave? That baby won't never supposed to leave that hospital.
Now, the question on everyone's mind becomes, what really happened to baby Ijaya? The truth, however, was even more unsettling than anyone imagined. What unfolded in the investigation revealed a story not of accident, but of choices and actions that pointed to something far darker. Doctors at Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters knew immediately that something was wrong. The condition of baby Ijaya simply did not align with the parents' explanation. The story of a stroller fall sounded far too simple for what they were seeing. None of the signs matched an accident. And right at that moment, the police were called in. Norfolk police arrived quickly, interviewing staff and securing the scene. The parents' demeanor raised immediate suspicion. They both didn't show any kind of emotion. To those watching, it felt as if the gravity of the situation hadn't registered, or worse, was being ignored. Witnesses shared with detectives that they had witnessed Hillary laughing as he checked his daughter in, while Ziabrea appeared detached, offering little urgency. In this case, once medical professionals determine the injuries are inconsistent with the parent's account, the case shifts from a medical emergency to a potential criminal matter. Under Virginia law, parents have a legal duty of care to seek immediate medical attention for their child. Delaying treatment, especially for a newborn, can itself be considered neglect. Combined with the suspicious circumstances, prosecutors now had grounds to pursue charges not only for abuse, but also for failure to protect. What began as a routine hospital intake was rapidly unfolding into a criminal investigation that would shake the community to its core. Investigators dug into the couple's account. Hillary claimed he had been jogging with the baby in a stroller when she fell out, hitting the pavement. He said they treated her at home with witch hazel and gauze before finally seeking medical care 2 days later. But forensic evidence told a different story. The baby's condition showed signs that were inconsistent with an accidental fall. Medical examiners concluded the harm was not accidental, pointing instead to deliberate actions or severe neglect. However, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Detectives realized they could not determine which parent had physically harmed Ijaya. Both were present, both responsible, and both had failed to seek immediate medical care. In this case, the uncertainty over who did what did not absolve either parent, because both had shared responsibility. Both could be held accountable. This legal angle shifted the case from a tragic accident to a criminal matter.
Two parents accused of abusing and their newborn baby appeared in court in Norfolk this morning.
Ziabrea Parker and Hillary Johnson II were arrested in May on charges of second-degree murder and child abuse. Jemiah Beatty was in the courtroom, so we do want to warn you, some of the details of this case are disturbing.
The Commonwealth determined this morning there is a substantial amount of evidence to support second-degree murder and child abuse charges against Zabria Parker and Hillary Johnson II. This morning, we learned more about Zabria Parker and Hillary Johnson II's actions leading up to their arrest and their troubled living conditions. 3 witnesses took the stand on behalf of the Commonwealth, including a registered nurse, a Norfolk detective, and a Norfolk police officer. All 3 were working the day when Parker and Johnson arrived at the Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters seeking help for their daughter. For the first time, we saw surveillance video of Parker and Johnson arriving at the hospital. You can see Johnson and Parker entering with a stroller containing the 9-day-old baby. At the time, witnesses say the baby had been unresponsive for hours and was cold to the touch. The Norfolk police officer testified seeing bruises on the baby's hands and feet and bruises on the child's back. We also learned in court the day before their arrival at CHKD, the 2 were living in a homeless camp near Brambleton Avenue. The Commonwealth says Johnson testified to detectives about how the possible injuries happened. The Commonwealth says Johnson testified to detectives about how the possible injuries happened. Johnson told detectives while on a walk the baby was not secure and fell out of the stroller, striking its head on the ground. We also learned Parker attempted to treat the child's injuries with peroxide and gauze. However, medical records show both Parker and Johnson did not seek medical help prior to their arrival at CHKD. Witnesses say the couple did not appear to be worried or upset about their daughter's condition. Detectives said Parker confessed that the baby was wheezing the night before they went to the hospital. This case now moves to the grand jury. In Norfolk,
prosecutors now had grounds to pursue charges not only for direct harm, but also for failure to protect, a principle that ensures caregivers cannot escape liability simply because blame cannot be pinned on one individual. With mounting evidence, police arrested both Hillary Johnson II and Zabria Parker. The charges were severe. 24-year-old Hillary Johnson II was charged with second-degree murder, and 22-year-old Zabria Parker for child endangerment. The couple denied harming their daughter, insisting the stroller fall was real. But prosecutors emphasized the delay in seeking help and the troubling inconsistencies in their account. From a legal standpoint, this delay was critical.
Well, new at noon, 2 parents charged in connection to the death of their infant child faced a Norfolk judge this morning.
Zabria Parker and Hillary Johnson II are accused of their 9-day-old baby, and Casey Baylor was in court and shares new details.
both Zabria Parker and Hillary Johnson II appeared in court for a rather quick hearing this morning, both of their attorneys requesting competency and sanity evaluations. Parker and Johnson are accused of and abusing their 9-day-old baby. Norfolk police say the parents brought their unresponsive child to CHKD back in May. Court records say the baby was cold to touch when she arrived to the hospital. Officials say the baby showed signs of abuse with cuts, burns, and bruises on her body. Records say Parker allegedly didn't think the injuries appeared to be serious, and she tried treating the child with home remedies like witch hazel. Paperwork adds Johnson appeared, quote, cavalier about the offense. Thursday morning, attorneys for both parents requested a competency evaluation as well as a test to understand their sanity at the time of the offense. A Norfolk judge told the mother and father doctors would see them at the jail and ask them questions to see if they're able to understand the court process. Outside the courtroom, Parker's attorney says due to the nature of the case, there's a level of concern for competency, which is why he requested the evaluations. Lawyers for both Parker and Johnson requested separate doctors for those evaluations. They're due back in court in October. In Norfolk, I'm Casey Baylor for 13 News Now.
And Parker's attorney previously told 13 News Now he believes the evidence that he's seen does not suggest his client committed the injuries.
Under Virginia law, parents have a non-negotiable duty of care. Failing to provide immediate medical attention for a newborn can itself be prosecuted as neglect. When combined with evidence suggesting deliberate harm, the case escalated beyond negligence into criminal liability. For Hillary, prosecutors argued that his actions and explanations pointed to intent, or at least reckless disregard, which justified the charge of second-degree murder. For Zabria, the evidence suggested complicity through neglect rather than direct physical harm, leading to a charge of child endangerment. This distinction reflected how the law separates active harm from failure to protect, ensuring that both parents were held accountable, even if investigators could not prove who inflicted the injuries. And soon enough, the case moved from the hospital to the courtroom. The trial was tense, with prosecutors presenting medical evidence that contradicted the parents' story. Witnesses described the chilling behavior of Hillary at the hospital. Doctors testified that the injuries were deliberate.
Court documents also say that the autopsy revealed that the child had several bruises on her head, broken ribs, and showed symptoms of shaken baby.
Defense attorneys argued the couple were young, inexperienced, and panicked after the accident. They claimed the burns could have been caused by a heating pad and the bruises by the fall. But just when it seemed the defense might sway the jury, the autopsy report delivered the final blow. The medical examiner confirmed the injuries were consistent with endangerment, not accident. The stroller story collapsed under scrutiny. In August 2025, both defendants entered plea deals. Hillary Johnson II pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. In exchange, the child abuse charge against him was dismissed. Zebrea Parker also pleaded guilty to felony child abuse with serious injury. The murder charge against her was dropped. The plea agreements ensured convictions while acknowledging the difficulty of proving direct physical responsibility for each injury. Prosecutors explained that while both parents had played a role in the suffering of their infant daughter, the evidence did not clearly establish which parent had inflicted specific injuries. By securing guilty pleas, the state avoided the risk of acquittal and guaranteed that both would face prison time. In October 2025, at sentencing, the court weighed the severity of the crime and the suffering endured by the infant. The courtroom was tense, filled with silence, as the judge recounted the evidence. The judge emphasized that the case was not simply about poverty or hardship, but about choices made in moments when the child's life depended on her parents' care. 24-year-old Hillary Johnson II received 19 years in prison for second-degree murder, and 22-year-old Zebrea Parker received 10 years in prison for felony child endangerment. The judge emphasized that both parents had failed in their most basic duty, to protect their child and seek immediate medical care. He noted that while their circumstances were difficult, nothing excused the neglect and violence that led to Ajaya's death. The sentencing was meant not only to punish, but also to send a message that the justice system would not overlook the suffering of the most vulnerable. The sentencing of Hillary Johnson II and Zebrea Parker left the Norfolk community stunned. Many struggled to comprehend how two young parents could allow or inflict such harm on a child who had barely lived 9 days. Neighbors described the couple as quiet, but not particularly attentive. Some recalled seeing them with the baby, but noticed little warmth or care. Others admitted they never suspected such darkness behind closed doors. Psychological experts noted that the couple's circumstances, poverty, homelessness, and the stress of young parenthood may have created an environment of emotional instability. The lack of secure housing, financial strain, and absence of support systems. In such conditions, even minor stressors can escalate into harmful behavior, especially when individuals lack coping mechanisms or mental health support. But then, as the news spread, outrage began to build. Community members demanded accountability. Advocacy groups for child protection highlighted the case as a chilling reminder of how vulnerable infants are and how quickly neglect can turn fatal. The case became a symbol of the dangers faced by children born into unstable circumstances, sparking conversations about poverty, homelessness, and the lack of support systems for struggling parents. However, the most heartbreaking reactions came from within the family itself. Relatives of Zebrea expressed devastation, insisting they never believed she could harm her child. Some defended her as a young mother overwhelmed by circumstances, while others condemned both parents for failing to protect Ijaya. The divide within the family mirrored the divide in the community, torn between sympathy for two young adults who had been living in hardship and outrage at the irreversible loss of a newborn life. Ijaya's funeral was small, quiet, and unbearably tragic. A tiny casket carried the body of a baby who had never had the chance to live. Family members wept openly, struggling to reconcile the loss with the reality that her own parents were responsible. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, but also with anger. The tragedy of baby Ijaya forces us to look beyond the crime itself and ask deeper questions about what might have been happening in the minds of her parents. Psychologists often note that new parenthood is one of the most stressful transitions in life. Sleep deprivation, financial strain. In cases like this, mental health issues may have played a role. Conditions such as postpartum depression, anxiety disorders, or unresolved trauma can distort judgment and blunt emotional responses. Some parents under extreme stress may dissociate, appearing detached or even inappropriate in moments of crisis. From a legal perspective, the case underscores the principle of duty of care. Parents are legally bound to protect their children and seek immediate medical help when needed. But from a psychological perspective, it highlights the importance of early mental health screening and intervention. Hospitals, social services, and communities must recognize that warning signs, whether raised by family members or observed in behavior, can be signals of deeper instability. The ignored plea from Hillary's grandfather becomes even more haunting in this light. His instinct may have been sensing not just irresponsibility, but possible psychological unfitness. Had those concerns been taken seriously, mental health evaluations or protective measures might have prevented the tragedy. Additional research shows that untreated postpartum depression can sometimes lead to detachment from the infant, while stress-induced psychosis or substance use disorders can impair judgment and increase risk of harm. These are rare, but real conditions that highlight why mental health care must be integrated into maternal and paternal health programs. The lesson here is twofold. Mental health support for new parents is essential. Addressing postpartum depression, stress, or trauma early can prevent neglect and abuse. Community and institutional vigilance matters. When warnings are raised, they must be acted upon, not dismissed, because justice punishes after the fact. But prevention, through mental health care and accountability, saves lives before tragedy strikes.